Gary, of course, you had an incredible experience working with the legendary Stanley Kubrick, and it's such an interesting path to how you ended up in that movie and how vital you were to the creative process and one of the most iconic scenes in the history of cinema, the scene in the pod. Can you talk a little bit about the road to 2001 and how, and your relationship was so unique with Stanley? People think of him as a very cold man, but that was not your experience.
So, what do I push? Anything? Or is it just on?
There you go.
Oh, it's just on. It's like me sometime. First off, to dispel any myths, Stanley was the only guy I worked for smarter than I was. Does that piss you off? Anyway, no, Kubrick was the greatest guy, incredibly bright. There was nobody like him. I mean, you know, people say, you did Star Trek and you did 2001, 6 days, 6 months. So, you know, if you put that together in your head, when people say to me, which is your favorite job, Star Trek or 2001, I'm not against Star Trek. I don't mean it that way. I just mean the worst thing about that job, and I've called it the worst job I ever had because of I had to wear these full contact eye covers to make so I could become God. And
Basically tinfoil in
yeah. Tinfoil and a
contact lenses, yeah.
full contact over the eyeballs. On the first day, I didn't wear them. And Roddenberry, being the trickster that he was, didn't say anything to me about it. And boom, the guy pulls my head back, puts these two eyes in. And fortunately, in my career, I'd been a cowboy stuntman, and I knew camera angles and everything. And so somebody said, can you see? And I said, no, I can't see. So all the fights and everything I did, they allowed me to choreograph it because, am I going on too long here?
Oh, keep going, Gary. We're here to hear you.
You know, stunt fighting in movies has, first off, movie time and real time are not, there's no relationship between them. A minute on film is like a month in real life. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but stunt fights are all angles. And because I had been mostly a cowboy stuntman, I knew all the angles and the lenses. And when I would work with the New York actors later in my career, and they were all into method and stuff like that. I mean, you know, I can't say I belong to that school at all. But, you know, they're okay. And I'd be on a job, and they'd come right out of the actor's studio, and they'd go, oh, you know, oh, God. You know, and they'd be trying to get themselves in character. And they say, you don't take any preparation. I say, yeah, I do. The guy says, action. I said, at action, I become another guy, you know? You got to learn to do that.
But you knew the physicality of working for a camera.
Absolutely. When you're setting up stunts, you know, if I one day was working on a job and I asked what lens the cameraman had, and these two young kids from New York said, well, what does that have to do with the emotions we're using in this? You know, and I go, how about everything? Yeah. You know, meaning reality is reality. Reality in front of a camera is reality of a different nature. It's a technical medium first. And so if you learn where all the lenses are, if it's a long lens, you have to cut your motions down. If it's a wide angle lens, meaning, you know, big screen, you can be more overt. But I mean, you take an actor like Jim Carrey, I'm not from that school. I mean, that guy's all over the place. So I would imagine they shoot the guy with a wide angle all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, how can they keep him in the box? Anyway, I don't know if I'm going, you know, if I'm going in a direction you care about hearing, but acting in front of a camera, you know, I've worked in Broadway, I've worked in the theater. I mean, it's nice and everything, and I think it's fun. The best thing about it is that you can sleep till 11 o'clock. No, hear me out. You know, on the days you had a matinee, you go, hey, man, I get to sleep till 4 o'clock, you know, which means you could raise holy hell the night before. But
certainly your training as a stuntman and being able to know which lens they were using and how to adapt your performance to them was appreciated by Stanley Kubrick, right? Because
Kubrick was the greatest.
Because he knew that you knew what you were doing.
Yeah. I asked him one day, I said, hey, Stanley, I gambled with Stanley. I played snooker with him. I never played chess with him, even though I was the best chess player in Malibu. I was.
I believe you.
Yeah. And I'm bragging, but I'm a braggart. And so one day, Stanley said, one of my buddies, when I came back from the movie, said, hey, did you play Stanley in chess? Stanley was a chess hustler in Greenwich Village.
Yeah.
And I knew about him because the word gets around. And one of my buddies said, hey, did you play Stanley? I said, no, man. I said, why not? Hey, I like to win.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I am a poker player, though. I ran games when I was a movie star on Wednesday nights.
You're bluffing.
I ran games, cut the pot. I had, you know, I bought good food, a lot of booze. But I started playing poker. I grew up on a ranch. My father was a very successful man. He started Bunny Love Carrots, and the little carrots in the bag was started by my uncle. You know, you throw them in your kid's lunchbox. It's 40% of the market now, the little carrots. But anyway, my dad found out that on Saturday nights, he thought I'd be taking my girlfriend to the valley to a drive-in and get in the back seat. That's my old man. And he said to me, hey, Shorty. He used to call me Shorty. I was 6'1". Yeah. And my father was from Poland. Came across on the boat. My mother was from Berlin, so I was the firstborn in America in the family. Anyway, my father said, hey, Shorty, I found out you're playing poker at the Saucus Cafe, Burkhardt Saucus Cafe. And when your dad catches you, and he's smart as he was, you just kind of give up. And I looked him right in the eye, and I said, yeah, I am. He said, Shorty, you work hard for your money. You know, drive truck, you work on the ranch. What are you doing? And that's a real interesting moment, because all of you who have had a successful life, which I've had, and I hope you have, there comes a time where you've got to confront people with your father or what's happening in your life. And I said, well, this is the time. I said, Dad, I enjoy playing because I'm winning a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And he knew these guys. You know, one guy was heir to the Vaseline fortune, and New Hall Ranch was the largest ranch company in America.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of those guys was Bobby Cheesebarrow. He owned part of New Hall Ranch. And these guys are all in the poker game, and it was high-stakes poker, big bucks. And he said, so what are you doing in there with those guys? They're rich. And then there was that moment, and I'm going to take the muleta sword out. I'm going over to the bull's horns, and I'm going to kill him, and I'm going to tell my dad what's happening in life. It's finally time. I said, Dad, you don't really understand. I'm better than they are. And my dad doesn't understand anything about poker. So he says, well, that means you win? Well, yeah, in the movies, the guy wins all the time. But in real life, there are nights you can't get any good cards. Those of you out there who play poker know that you just can't do anything. So you have to cut your losses and, you know.
And let them invite you back and
yeah, it's like
work on it.
Kenny Rogers said, you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. So on the nights you're not getting anything, you just stay cool. You know, you just sit there and you take your lumps.
Yeah.
You drop. So my dad said, well, you're winning a lot of money. And I'll tell you what I did with that money later. So I said, yeah, I'm winning quite a bit of money. He says, well, where is it? I said, I didn't want you to know about it. He said, where is it? It's out in the yard in cans. I buried my money so my father wouldn't know. Now, I'm going to go on to the next move. I went to UCLA. I was on a football scholarship. I also won a high school, I won the poster contest for Smokey the Bear for all of America. So I was an artist, I was a football player, and I ended up an English major, you know, because I like to read. But the point that I'm making here is that, you know, if you have a kid and he's smart and he's doing well and he's a cocky kid like I was, don't try to hold him down. Just try to get him to stay out of jail.
So in other words, you stayed out of jail by not playing Stanley and chess.
Well, you know, I'm not stupid. Although, I want to tell you, Stanley had a snooker table, big, huge, antique snooker table. Most beautiful thing you ever saw, probably 5-10 grand. And Stanley loved playing snooker. Well, snooker is not pool. Pool, you shoot hard. It's the same cue and all that, but snooker is a delicate game. It's played with red balls and number balls. Probably some of you out here have played it. Probably not very many of you. You're Star Trek fans. You probably don't do things like that. Well, some of you do. But you don't tell your wife. Anyway, so I'm playing Stanley, and Stanley says, you know, sometimes you don't use a crutch. And the crutch is the thing you have when you have a difficult angle and you get out, you put the crutch down and you put the cue ball on it. Right. Did you know that?
I didn't.
I knew you didn't. You can tell by looking at him, he's not a player.
Well, or that could be me fooling you.
That's right, you could be bluffing.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Although people who bluff only in movies win, in real life they don't do. They don't ever win in real life. So you put this thing down, you put the cue stick on it, and then you go like that, and it's called a crutch. So Stanley says, you know, you're the only person I've ever played that never uses a crutch. You just use your left hand. Okay, now I'm bragging. I said, yeah. And he said, why is that? I said, I'm ambidextrous. I played basketball. I was a center at only 6'1". And why was I? Because I could shoot with either hand. Yeah, okay. So Stanley said, what would happen if you played me the whole match with your left hand? I said, I'd still beat you. And so the rest of the time, I played with him. I loved Stanley Kubrick. He's the smartest, brightest man I ever knew. And so every Friday night, I'd go to his house. We'd have a great meal. I'd show up with all these incredible London birds, you know, with the mini skirts. And Stanley's wife would go, you know. And Stanley would always go, you always show up with those beautiful girls. How do you meet them? I said, I'm a cowboy. Yeah. I go out in the park. I see a great-looking chick.
You got your lariat?
Yeah. I'd go out in the park, and I'd see a good-looking chick, and I'd just walk up and say, hey, look. I remember one of the most beautiful ones I ever met had this big wild dog, and she was a gorgeous chick, and she's got this dog on a leash, and I walked up and I said, hey, lady, in exchange for your phone number, I'll shape that dog up for you. Anyway, it was kind of funny. That chick was beautiful. She was the mistress to somebody real high in government.
As it happens, yeah.
As it happens, you know. But she used to sneak around with me once in a while. Anyway, okay, so here's what I did with the money I won. When I got in college, I realized that cash, you know the old thing, money talks, BS walks. I became a money lender, which really makes me a horrible person, I know, but I was a money lender. So if you were a dweeby fraternity guy, now everybody's hip. But you know, in the 50s, fraternity guys, some of them were dweeby. And they'd come up to me and they wouldn't know how to do anything. Right. And I'd been on the rodeo circuit as a kid and been all over the planet by then, you know. And I'd look at them and say, okay, what do you want? Well, I want to borrow some money. I've got a date with Winnie Alker, the Alpha Delta Phi Delta. Oh, you do? Yeah, what do you think I ought to do? Well, take her to this restaurant, buy her this, buy her that. You know, like, so I became the guy. You know, like James Garner in the movie, you know, the collector.
You're the guy behind the guy.
I was the guy. And so when I got kicked out of school, going forward, I got kicked out of school for beating the hell out of one of those fraternity guys. I did, in a beer bust. And so I had to go off, and I lived in Mexico for a year and worked on a fishing boat for a German guy. Had a great time. And, you know, I came back to UCLA, and I'm just about finished here. I'm rambling, but, you know, what are you going to do? So I came back from Mexico and went back out for football practice. And here I'd been living the life in Mexico, you know. I mean, I was working on a boat. The guy that owned it was a German guy. He knew I was half German. He said, well, I'll give you a deal on everybody that you bring on a charter. You know, so I was really doing well. And then I went down to Acapulco, and I gigoloed for a while. I did the old gigolo, you know. I did the old gigolo with the rich chicks and stuff like that. So I know that I'm a bad person, but, you know, I had a great life. I'm telling you, very few people in this business have had probably as much fun as I have in their life.
So, and then you met Gene Roddenberry.
Well, Roddenberry, listen, Roddenberry was a very talented man, don't get me wrong, but he was a hustler himself.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the things that we would do all the time and back and forth with each other. When he sent me the script to do Star Trek, I had already signed with Kubrick for 2001. And so Gene sent me the script, and I looked at him. I said, hey, Gene, I'm going off to make this big movie. I started off in movies, but I was in television at that time. And he said, it was hard in my day to do both. Today, they're lucky. They get to do whatever they want. But in my day, you couldn't do that. So I said, well, I don't know if I want to do any TV. I'm going back to the movies. And Roddenberry said, well, I'll send a script to you, and you know, you read it, and I'll take care of you financially. Right. That's all I'm going to say.
It'd be so great if you would do this for me, because you would be a great asset to our show.
Thank you, Gene. Zip it. I would go at this. Just zip it up. Don't con me all the time. You know, give me a break. So I said to Roddenberry, hey, Gene, so I'm out in space and I get zapped by some fortune and I become God? And he goes, yeah. And we all know that's who you think you are. I knew you'd laugh. Everybody laughs. See, that's self-deprecation. Yes. Flagellation. I was a Catholic until I gave up religion. And so, you know.
When you became God. Yeah.
Well, why bother? You already know the answer, you know. So anyway, I've had a hell of a good life, and I'm having fun. And this is the first show I've done in almost 4 years. You know, during the COVID, I said, forget it. I'm not rich, but I'm not poor. I have a beautiful home in Delaware, a lot of bedrooms, a lot of bathrooms, no mortgage. I got a great life. I've been married 4 times. I have a great wife. I've been with her 35 years, so I've kind of calmed down. My first wife was Stephanie Powers. You remember her from Heart to Heart. Very beautiful chick, really beautiful. Second wife, a hustler like me. I found out after about 6 months of being married to her, I got to jettison her. You know, jettison, you know.
Sure.
Yeah, and you pay.
Of course.
You pay. I
Nobody
look.
rides for free.
You pay. Nobody rides free, right? And then let's see.
That was 2.
Oh, third wife. Oh, third wife was a beautiful woman. My daughter's mother. That's the only kid I ever had. I won't tell you about how we got rid of the other kids because that's a big issue now in the new election. You know what I'm talking about. So, well, I'll get a laugh if I tell it. In my day in Hollywood, if you were like me and you were wild and everything, the women liked me. So I was racing through all these beautiful girls all the time. And some would get pregnant.
What?
On occasion. And so I had this black guy from the ghetto that did abortions for me.
Oh, my God.
I swear it's true. And one day, he turned, I almost laughed, I almost can't say this. He turned to me and said, Mr. Lockwood, I tell you, the way you are with these ladies, you had to put me on retainer.
God.
So, has anybody ever said that to you in your life? You know, an abortion?
not on stage.
I had to put you on retainer. So one of the great other moments, and I'm going to wrap it up, was I'm going to Stanley Kubrick's house. I used to go quite often when I was in London. And I get there one night, and Peter Sellers, one of the greatest talents that ever walked the planet. I don't care if you loved him or hate him, he could do anything. And I have a Mini Cooper, and I pull up, and Peter's a car freak. I don't know if you knew that. And he says, I said, Peter, Gary Lockwood. He says, hell, man, I know who you are. How are you? I said, good, good, good. What's happening? He said, well, you know, is that your Mini? Yeah. Have you got the runaway package? No. 300 pounds. Put in electric windows, blah, 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 you know. Put your extra power. So anyway, Peter said to me, hey, by the way, do you come back here often? I said, well, when I'm in London, I call him, and I come out here and have a meal and chat with him. And I never bring any women anymore because his wife used to get pissed off because Stanley would eyeball all these great-looking chicks I'd bring. And anyway, Peter looked at me and he said, I'll tell you something, mate. It's you and I. That Stanley had a history of not having actors back at the house.
Right.
Yeah. So I not only enjoyed my time with Kubrick, not only did I really consider him the most skilled, talented man I ever knew in anything, I gambled with him. I talked him out of betting the fight with Henry Cooper and Muhammad Ali, and he said, it's 8-1. I said, well, so? He said, well, I said, how much are you going to bet? He says, I'm thinking $500. I said, I'll book it. You'll book it? That's, if you lose, that's 8 times 5, $4,000. You got 4,000 sitting around? I said, yeah. I had English pounds stuffed in my mattress. And he says, well, comes the day of the fight. I said, have you decided what you're going to do? He said, I'm following your lead. He said, I trust you. I was a boxer some as a kid, too. You don't know about that. So, yeah, I fought. It's one of the things I did in my life.
But Stanley made you stop gambling on set because you were taking the crew for all their money, and
He did. Oh, you've heard that story.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So one day Stanley goes, Lockwood, I don't want you gambling with my crew anymore. What's the deal? Most of them were Cockneys. And Cockneys are a whole world of their own. If you haven't lived in London, you don't know Cockneys. So one day, this Cockney guy owed me like 500-600 pounds, which is almost $1,500. And we would write it down, you know. And
They weren't making that much a week.
he was making about 40 pounds a week.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's down to me, in the neighborhood of $1,500. And so on a given Monday, he doesn't show up. And I turned to one of the other Cockney guys and I said, hey, what happened to whatever the hell his name was, Rice or David or somebody like that? And he said, he owes you a lot of money, didn't he, mate? I said, yeah, he did. Well, he skedaddled on you. He's gone, flew. I said, wow, he was making £40 a week. I don't get that. Why would he leave one of the best jobs around working on this film? He's a Cockney, mate. Okay, what does that mean? Well, he doesn't look at it like he lost a £40 a week job, mate. He looks at it like he did you out of 500 pounds.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that was it. So, introduction. And then later comes Michael Caine, who was a Cockney. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How much did he take you for?
No.
Oh, good.
No. Caine, no.
I
like Michael Caine. He
borrowed your Mini Cooper to steal gold from Italy.
Yeah.
Michael Caine is one talented man.
Darn right.
You're damn right. Real talented man. So any questions, anybody?
I want to ask you something first to kind of tie the whole room together, because you've mentioned boxing and gambling and Kenny Rogers and even gratification.
And even who?
Gratification. Right?
Oh,
So
I
Kenny
thought you said Prestone.
I don't know. I was looking for a nice way to say sex. So I have to ask you, Kenny Rogers, he said you have to know when to hold him and know when to fold him. He also said you have to know when to walk away and know when to run. Now, this is just a hypothetical, but if you are confronted by a pack of angry baboons, do you walk away or do you run? That's
You guys really want me to tell that story?
Oh my God.
Well, maybe not all of it.
Maybe not all the story. We can.
No,
Highlights.
Oh my God. Okay.
Buckle up.
I'm in Cape Town. I think you guys will like this. This is probably, of all the weird things that have happened to me, this is one of the best. I mean, it's humorous, but I have to go all the way on it. So if you're a real straight lady, turn your ears in, But so I'm at Cape Mountain, and I sailed a lot in my life, so I'm very much into like the Southern Oceans going left to right, and the Indian Ocean's coming down like this. And so I'm standing on Cape Mountain, and I'm looking at the two oceans, and I've got all these thoughts in my head of, by the way, the greatest sailor in the world's a lady. You don't know that, but it is. Her name was Ellen MacArthur. She was an English girl. And so I'm thinking about all these things, sailors and everything. Chichester, the gypsy moth, And there's a little hut where you can get coffee. So I go in and buy a coffee. And as you're walking out, I've got a coffee cup in my left hand. And there's a sign over the doorway, do not take merchandise outside this door. So, hey, cowboys don't pay attention to rules. Fuck, screw this. Yeah. So I walk out the door, and I've got a coffee cup in my left hand, a white coffee cup, styrofoam. Whoomp! 6 boons, or 5 or 6, surround me.
Baboons.
And they've been known to kill people out in the wild. And Jesus. And the baboon, I'm looking at them, and boy, they're just,
They're eyeing you.
They want some coffee.
They're looking at me like, what is this? They weren't into coffee. They just wanted something, and then whatever it was, I had it. Yeah. So the boon grabs my right arm like this, and I've got the coffee cup in it, and he's pulling the coffee cup into his mouth, and these are called incised meanders. These are like, the big fang teeth. And he's opened these up, and I just looking down into this mouth, and he's pulling this thing toward my mouth, or toward his mouth. And I go, well, it's cowboy time here. So I kick him. I hit him. He had my left hand. I hit him with a right cross. Boom! Knocked him on his ass. Calipicionates. I can't speak Latin as well. And boom! Give him a shot. Bam! He's down. Boom! And I start fighting these baboons. I am also trained in martial arts. You don't know that. Okay, what can I say? So, and I'm really decking these bones. And now the driver of the car is in a right-hand drive limo. And my third wife is my girlfriend at those days. I'm not married to her. She's in the back seat, and she and the driver's wife was in the back seat with my girlfriend at the time. And this guy, Bevis, was really a fun guy, and he hits the electric window and Lockwood, walk down here slowly, mate. Don't run, but walk macho. And I'm kind of laughing. I walk macho, you know. Okay. I felt like Robert Mitchum, you know.
Right.
Put on a Mitchum face, and I'm walking like this. I've got to go about, maybe 35 yards to the car. And I get in the car. Now, this becomes a real raw story. So if you don't want to hear a raw story, you ladies, close your ears. But so I get in the car, and the baboon, it comes right up the first guy, the leader. He's staring at me, and I'm in the passenger seat, which today is behind the steering wheel. And he's looking at me like this, and Bevis goes, he wants you bad. I said, yeah, believe me. He had a shot. I got mine in first. He says, oh, man, he's pissed. I said, well, he is, but I'm in here now. And he says, the Boone jumps up on the boot of the Mercedes, and he goes down there, the emblem, and he sits down. Shall I do it?
No.
Shall I say it?
We'll figure a way.
Okay.
He expresses his displeasure.
I'll use a bigger word. He ejaculates into the palm of his hand. And we all go, whoa. It's a baboon ritual.
So it's religion.
They only do it on Mercedes. And the boon ejaculates into his palm. Then he gets up, and he comes up, and he throws it like this, and it hits the windscreen. God, it was like it was like tapioca pudding.
Oh my God.
And
Okay. That was a good story.
he has comedy timing, this guy.
I think we should open it up to these
Oh,
folks who
okay.
have been waiting all hour.
Gary, before we do that, I got to ask you one last thing, because the one thing we know about Bill Shatner is everyone was scared of him. What I realize is you were tougher than Bill, and he was probably more cocky in a good way, and that's why you're so great in that episode, because Shatner had to genuflect to you as opposed to everyone else where they were genuflecting to Bill.
Which is the right thing to
because
do
you
to
were
God.
number one on the call sheet, and you acted like you were number one on Star Trek when you were the guest star.
I was okay with Shatner. It's the fans that created the rift. You know, a lot of fans thought, you did the pilot, why weren't you on it? I did that as a favor, I swear to you, to Roddenberry. Roddenberry was told, he made a pilot called The Cage,
Right.
and it didn't sell. And then NBC, I think it was, put up the money for a second pilot and said, Gary Lockwood has a good relationship with corporate America, you know. And meaning, you know, you got to sell shows. When you make a pilot and you show it in New York, some corporations got to say, okay, I'll buy 10. They used to buy 13 shows. Now they buy 3 or 4, right?
He had promised them Wagon Train to the Stars,
That's what he said.
and they brought you in to make it more of a cowboy show.
I'd say maybe you're right. Yeah. So anyway, I'm now doing 2001 one day, and I'm doing something in London on PR. And some guy walks in from NBC, and he says, you know that pilot you shot for Roddenberry? And you have to understand, you guys, don't get sensitive on me. It's a long time ago, and I wore these eyes. It was a horrible job. So I didn't think too much of it. You know, I was like, well, you know. Okay.
Just a gig.
Yeah, it was thank you. When you're an actor, it's just another way of you're not working for a living. And so he comes up and he says, it's sold. Well, as much as I had enmity with Roddenberry on occasion, I liked him.
Sure.
I really did like him. And I said, oh, Gene got that on the air? Boy, that's good. Never knowing it would become, it's an empire. Yeah. It's not a successful television show. It's a bloody empire. I have traveled around the world, I mean, other countries, signing autographs
on that
Star
6-day
Wars,
job.
a Star Trek that I made. And, you know, here's something I kind of had these eyes. It drove me crazy. I couldn't wait for the job to be over. And I've made a small fortune just signing my name on a photograph. So I'm glad I did that. It was fun.
Let's go to a few questions and really quick because we only have a few minutes, but please, I want to get to everybody.
Okay. My name is Alexander Whitcomb, and I have been a huge fan of 2001: Space Odyssey, and my favorite filmmaker is Stanley Kubrick, and who has made this icon of science fiction and cinema, generally speaking. And how is your chemistry with the actor who played as
Keir Dullea?
Yes. How is your chemistry with the actor Keir Dullea?
Keir Dullea, it's an Irish name.
Who played as Dave?
Yeah, Keir Dullea played Dave Bowman.
Yes.
Well, I'm second banana. Keir was first guy. I'm still friendly with him today. He lives in Connecticut. He's very much a gentleman. He's not a cowboy. He can't fight me.
Or a baboon.
But here's what I love about Keir Dullea. We're in Australia, and we're doing both of us are up in front of about 5,000 people, and we're carrying on. And Keir Dullea, somebody yells, wow, are you guys ever the odd couple? And I always loved Keir Dullea for this. He says, you guys don't understand. He's a poker player, a liar, a hustler. He's read 1,000 books. He's smarter than I am. So I'm the good guy. He's the bad guy. But ask him any question, he has a shot at answering it. That's who I am. So he was such a, I mean, 2 or 3 men in my life that I worked with, I'll never forget. I never forget Elvis. Never forget Keir Dullea. And another guy, he's dead now, is, who was the star of those weird airplane shows?
Leslie Nielsen?
Leslie Nielsen.
Leslie Nielsen, I loved him. Great time I had with him in the Philippines. So,
We have time for one more question, so let's thank you for that.
Happy birthday, Frank.
thank you, mate.
See you next Wednesday.
Hi, my name is Miles Stanley Ward, and my question to you is, in your younger years as an actor, what were your thoughts about Stanley Kubrick's 1960 film, the historical epic movie Spartacus?
What were your thoughts about Spartacus and Kubrick's films prior to 2001, Strange
I worked
Love?
on Spartacus in the beginning, up when they were, you know, up in the mountains. Before Spartacus broke loose, I was hired as a stunt man up there. And so later when I'm, you know, then Kirk Douglas fired the director and hired Stanley Kubrick because he'd made a small film. And Kirk Douglas is no dummy. I have a Kirk Douglas story. If you ever buy my book, which I hope my wife finishes editing one day, I have the greatest Kirk Douglas story you will ever hear. I can't tell
That's
it.
a tease for later.
That's a tease
That's
for his
a
book.
scene for.
Gary, thank you so much. We get amazing stories. You will never. I
Yeah,
know, but
we're out of time.
We're
We
out of
only got
time.
45 minutes.
We're getting a hook.
Yeah.
But you've never been to a panel like this. Never likely again. But if you want to talk to Gary, he'll be at his booth. So thank you so much. And they're going to take a big group selfie.
They don't go
So
anywhere.
everyone can come to the stage and
Yeah, everybody come on up.
participate. And thank you so much for a great panel.